I read a lot of contemporary romances this month. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be talking about some recent contemporary romance novels that I did pick up this month. If you guys don't know yet already, I tend to post a lot of community polls on my YouTube channel where I basically make a post and then I ask people to vote on it, and so that I can get like a certain idea of what my audience likes and what my audience is looking for out of this channel. So if you do notice some posts happening in the next run, definitely vote for it because it does play a heavy influence into the books that I do pick up, the content that you'll see on this channel, and so on and so forth. So for this video, what happened was that in the beginning of this month, I asked my viewers what they really wanted to see from me, and a lot of my viewers actually mentioned that they like to see me reading historical romances, and then they also like to see me reading a lot more indie romances, and that is not a surprise to me. I feel like Romance Booktube features a lot of romance booktubers that talk more specifically about indie romances, and meanwhile I never really built my brand on indie romances. I mostly built my brand on traditionally published romances. This year, I realized that a lot of the traditionally published romances from Berkeley, from Avon, from like St. Martin's Press, from everybody, like they're good, but there weren't like 4 or 5 star reads like I had last year. So suffice to say, I had to lean towards other methods of finding books and other routes to finding books that could be the best books of my 2021 pile. So I went into a deep dive in some indie romances, and here is a quick wrap up of some of them that I want to share with you. So the first contemporary romance I would like to talk about is actually one from Teagan Hunter, and this one's called Loath, Thy Neighbor. And I think this one is part of her new series called Roommate Romps series, and this is actually book number 1. Now, Teagan Hunter is a indie romance author that I do keep my tabs on, and I do keep my eyes on her, mostly because I did read her Pizza series or her Need series last year, and I really enjoyed her writing. I thought it was emotional. I thought her character developments were really good, and I liked her plot lines. So I was excited to pick up her latest romance, which is Loath, Thy Neighbor. Now, this one features an enemies to lovers romance trope. Our two characters hate each other and they despise each other, and they're also next door neighbors to each other. What happens is that our heroine really loves pie, and then our hero ends up buying the last slice of pie from under her nose. So she obviously hates him a lot and she can't stand him, and there's a multitude of reasons of why she and him shouldn't be together, but they somehow still always end up being very close proximity with each other, especially after he ends up accidentally burning down his room in the apartment building and causing a fire that basically leaves him not able to live in his room anymore, and now they're suddenly roommates in the room next door where she actually resides in. And this is kind of like their romance where they're forced to be with each other, they see each other all the time, and they get to know each other and fall in love. Now, this one I didn't really like as much as all the other Teagan Hunter books. I felt that the heroine was just a little bit too zany, a little too crazy for me, and I was kind of annoyed by her. And then our hero wasn't anything to write home about. You know, I wasn't really attracted to him. I didn't think his personality was that great in the first place. So this one, unfortunately, I didn't like as much, and I ended up only giving it an average 3 out of 5 stars, but it was definitely on a lower side. Now, the next book that I did pick up is one from a new to me author called Avery Flynn. Now, Avery Flynn has written a lot of romances in the past, and she's also a huge advocate in the romance community, and a lot of people have read her. So I did end up actually picking up a lot of Avery Flynn novels after I picked up this one because I had a very positive experience with her books. So this one is called Enemies on Tap, and this one features a friends to lovers romance that turned into enemies to lovers, and now it's a second chance romance. So this one features our main female heroine who has 2 other sisters, and basically they grew up in a small town, but a family issue happened, and now the whole town basically hates her family. So she has nothing left for her in that town, so she decides to actually pack up her bags and get the heck out of there and go into the big city and become a really good executive in a very big company and make the big bucks. But what happens is that her family actually inherits this brewery in the small town, and now she can't let the brewery go down because a lot of people are going to lose their jobs if she doesn't turn that brewery like into something big and something amazing. So she's forced to go back to the small town while also trying to balance her corporate job, and then there she runs into her high school sweetheart, her high school fling, whatever we like to call it, her first love. And they can't stand each other. They literally feel a lot of pain towards each other because, you know, something bad has happened between them to make them break up. And now he resents her a lot. And what she really needs to do now is to get a lot of capital and borrow a lot of money to restart the business, simply because the business is kind of like falling apart and like literally things are just not going the way that she wants it to. So she has to go towards him for a loan since he is basically the bank, like his family owns the bank. And this is kind of like their relationship where they have to battle it out so that they can save the business while also seeing if they still have feelings for each other and maybe they can be together in the end. I found that this one had a lot of angst towards it, and it was just so juicy because, like, obviously in the first couple of chapters you don't know why they broke up, you don't know why she broke his heart or how she broke his heart, and then you slowly get to like dive into the story and to like see what actually happened. And I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book in the series that I did pick up is Hollywood on Tap. Now this one I'm a little bit more iffy about, mostly because I don't really like Hollywood romances. I don't really get the appeal of reading a romance about, you know, falling in love with a celebrity, mostly because the conflict is usually, you know, outside media sources dragging these two characters apart, and I just find that that's kind of lame, even though it does happen in real life and it's realistic. But this one involves our character who, like, he lived in the town when he was growing up, and then he went on and became this really super famous actor. And in my head the entire time while reading this book, I thought he was Chris Evans, because Chris Evans is Chris Evans. And it was really interesting because what happens is that he becomes this really big Hollywood star, but then he's tired of it and he returns back to the small town to become the brewmaster at the brewery that was mentioned in book number 1. And then our heroine is actually one of the sisters of our main heroine in book number 1. So this is their kind of like enemies to lovers romance as well, and also friends to lovers romance. They can't really get along with each other, mostly because they have opposite personalities, but they somehow find a way to work with each other. And of course there is a lot of chemistry and sexual tension between these two characters. Now this one I didn't really like because it didn't have like the angst factor that I found in book number 1, and usually once like book number 1 really blows it out of the water and makes me really impressed, I have higher expectations for book number 2 in series. So this one didn't really match up to my expectations, and I gave this one a very average rating of 3 out of 5 stars. So after that I went ahead and picked up another Avery Flynn novel called The Negotiator, and this one involves a fake dating trope. Basically our hero really needs a buffer, so someone to kind of like slide in there between he and his mom, because his mom is desperately wanting him to get married and to develop a relationship and to like have an heir to the throne of the businesses that he has made and things like that. And our hero is sick and tired of it, so he decides to hire a fake girlfriend, and that is our heroine. And he hires her because she has this spunky personality where she doesn't let anybody talk back to her, no matter of like different level of class or seniority level. So what actually happens in the first meeting is that she actually shoos away his mother, and he's just severely impressed by her, and even the mother's pretty impressed by her too, because most of the girls that he has been seeing have no backbone. So she's excited for this change in this finding this girl who has this personality and spunk. And then basically what happens is that they go on a series of dates, they go on these events with each other, they get to know each other, there's chemistry, you know, things are happening, but they all know that at the end of the day this is a contract, there's an expiration date, and things might not end well for both of them because they don't know if their feelings are mutual or if it's just a one-sided relationship. Now this one, I got tired of it pretty quickly. Like I have to say, like around the midway through, I didn't find it cute anymore. The first half I was like vibing with it and I was like, this is it, like I'm good. I found another solid one from Avery Flynn. But then the second half I was just tired. Like I was just so tired of her like hiding her feelings from him, and then them not really communicating that they might have something special going on with each other. So this one, like, once again, I gave it another average 3 out of 5 stars. Honestly, when I go through the list of books that I read this month, I didn't realize that I went to specific author binges, but apparently I did, and I did read a lot of Avery Flynn this month. So the next book that I did pick up was His Undercover Princess by Avery Flynn. And now this one I actually really enjoyed. This one definitely had the heat elements to it as well as suspense elements to it, and I guess I could have included it in one of my cozy romantic suspense recommendation videos, but I forgot, so here it is. So this one involves our heroine, who is a stylist, and she works a very, you know, cozy life. She has a cozy life where she pays her rent and she does her job, but what she's actually hiding is the fact that she is a princess and that she needs to go back to her small country and to take over the throne and restore the monarchy, or else chaos will happen on that island or in that country that she resides in. And then basically what happens is that our hero is actually a billionaire, and everybody thinks that he's just a really good businessman and he makes a lot of money through that, but actually he is a special operations person, and he is told to retrieve her and to bring her back to the country so that they can restore the monarchy and that peace will be happening. And then afterwards, this is kind of like their kind of push and pull relationship between these two, because obviously she really wants to stand her ground and stay in America and to do her job and continue to live a normal life that she fell in love with, and not to go back to the country and have all these like ridiculous responsibilities. But then he is out here convincing her to come back and to take on the things so that they can protect the people. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the sexual tension was definitely there. I felt like it was kind of like a forbidden relationship because he wasn't exactly like monarch, like royalty, but then afterwards she doesn't care about that stuff anyways. And I just like the action elements to it as well. It definitely kept me on the edge of my seat when I was listening to the audiobook. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So the next contemporary romance that I did pick up was The Roommate Problem by Mariah Ankenman. And now this one I thought I was really going to like. This one follows a grumpy and Miss Sunshine trope. This one follows our main heroine who is looking for a roommate, and she's very like artsy, she's really expressive with herself, and she's very messy. And she's definitely a type B personality, so she doesn't let the little things bother her. So what happens is that she sets out an advertisement asking for a roommate, and then our hero kind of steps in and goes like, hey, I thought you were looking for a roommate, but I thought you were a guy. And then she is like, well, I'm not a guy, but I do need a roommate and you need a place to stay, so why don't we just become roommates together? And then so they actually end up stay in the same small apartment together and getting to know each other more. And he is the opposite of her. He is very type A personality. He likes to keep things clean all the time. He likes to keep things orderly, and he doesn't like to venture out and to have like super specific adventures. So what happens is that they both help each other to find like significant others for each other, because like they're both single and ready to mingle. But what ends up happening is that they fall in love with each other in the end. Now this one, I didn't feel like that this one was very interesting at most of the times. Like I kind of lost interest very early on. I kind of tried to force myself to really dive deep in this book and to really like it, but I really liked our male character because he was just so quiet all the time. But like the lack of chemistry that I felt from these two main characters definitely drove my rating down, and I only gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next contemporary romance that I did pick up is one from Penelope Ward. This one's called The Crush, and this one follows kind of a forbidden romance trope. Our heroine is the younger sister, and she is in love with her older brother's best friend. And basically she has been in love with him for all her childhood years, but she couldn't express it because the older brother was always in the way, and they were tightly knit like a family, so anything that could happen between each other would disturb the family, and if they were to break up, it would really tear apart the family. What actually ends up happening is that there's this tragic accident that takes place, and it leaves our heroine and her older brother in a really bad spot, and the best friend kind of like flees the town, doesn't really connect with them anymore, but he comes back to the small town and therefore enters into her life again. And then basically this is the story of them reconnecting and reuniting, and it's a second chance romance. Of course, there are still elements to the book where they can't be together, mostly because the older brother is very protective of the younger sister, and the best friend, our hero, is actually known to be kind of a very man-whorish type of person, and the older brother doesn't trust him with the younger sister. So there's a bit of angst in that as well. This one is definitely very entertaining. I feel like Penelope Ward's writing is always entertaining, and the stories are just like juicy because like little things happen here and there, but it's definitely not like something that you will write home about, or it doesn't have a lot of substance to it. You just read it because it's easy to read and it's easy to sink into. With that being said, this one didn't really impress me in the end, and I didn't really like the plot twists that were happening with our characters, and I was like, what is this? This is so unnecessary. And then it kind of like does time jumps that are kind of weird. So I gave this one an average 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I did pick up was one from Reid. This one's Kissing Galileo, and this one is part of her series called Dear Professor series. Now, I read the first book in the first series, and I actually really enjoyed that one. So I was holding off on Kissing Galileo for the longest time ever because I knew that once I finished it, I wouldn't have anything left of it. So I finally bit the bullet after like many years of reading the book number 1 to finish off the series and read book number 2. Now this one, or this series, actually follows a student-teacher relationship where you kind of fall in love with your professor, and I'm not sure if like the university code allows them to have a student-teacher relationship, but I assume they do because they obviously end up with a happily ever after and they are together. But this one focuses specifically on our main heroine, who actually has an eccentric job. She works at a lingerie store that is very special in a way that it's very closed off, is members only, and what she does is that she models for lingerie. There's a special rule where the clients can only touch the pieces of lingerie, so like the pieces of clothing. So the less you wear, the less parts that the clients can actually touch. So our heroine's really smart, and she actually chooses to wear like the least amount of clothing possible, so the only places the clients can touch is like maybe a strap as opposed to the back, the hips, and so on and so forth. And then what happens is that the person that she least expects to walk into this small boutique is her professor, and her instantly have this like strong connection with each other. Chemistry is off the charts, and she thinks that he doesn't recognize her, but what actually ends up happening is that the professor really does recognize her, and this is their romance, between a forbidden romance between a professor and a student. This one didn't really like I was like, okay, like I didn't feel the chemistry. It wasn't just like, and you know, I was told that they felt the chemistry, but I just didn't feel it in my bones, and I couldn't connect with the characters, and I couldn't connect with the story, and I ended up not caring. So it was a very average 3 out of 5 stars for me. So the last book that I do want to talk about in this little mini contemporary romance wrap up is Happy Singles Day by Anne-Marie Walker. Now this one was sent to me from Source Books, and it was released in January, but I finally had some time to pick it up and to read it. And now this one follows our heroine, who is a professional organizer, and she's stressed always, so she decides to take a vacation, even though it's kind of forced, and she goes to a bed and breakfast, and there she meets our hero, who is a single father and who just wants to run the family business and try to forget the fact that he might be still in love with his late wife. And this is a story of our two characters kind of getting over their own personal issues, and our hero dealing with the grief of, you know, his wife being passed away and now he being responsible for their daughter. And this is kind of like the relationship where he mends his broken heart and ends up falling in love with our heroine. Now this one, I felt like it was a good setup. I felt like that the characters had a good thing going, but I also felt like that this one leaned more towards women fiction as opposed to romance. Like I felt like the romantic elements to it wasn't as strong, but definitely like other topics were stronger. Characters were discussing their own issues. That was definitely stronger. And also there was like parts of it where I felt like that the synopsis was definitely misleading. For majority of the book, you don't really see the daughter at all, and then you start to realize that the daughter is not really part of the story, but she is still. So that kind of like took me out of the book a bit, and I was meh about it. Like it was kind of like an average read. I liked it, but I didn't really like I wouldn't like tell everybody to pick it up right now. So yeah, if it's on your TBR and if you're still interested in reading this book, pick it up, see it, but I wouldn't like hold it up to a very high standard. But that is it for some recent contemporary romances that I did pick up. I don't know if I'm going to be doing monthly wrap-ups because it's just a little bit time consuming, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this one because I do have a recently read contemporary romances part 2 that will be filming by the end of this month. But I'll see you guys again next time with a new video. Bye.